Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. As introduced, my name is Zam Ishmael. I'm the National Director of the Liberal Party Canada and was the National Campaign Director for the 2021 General Campaign.
My name is Jeremy Broadhurst. I currently work in the Prime Minister's office as a Senior Advisor to the Prime Minister. In the spring of 2019, I took an unpaid leave of absence from my then job as Chief of Staff to the Minister of Foreign Affairs to act as the National Campaign Director for the Liberal Party Canada in the election of 2019.
Wake up call.
This guy's garage. Like and subscribe.
Mr. Cooper, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Thank you to the witnesses. I'm going to be directing my questions through you to Mr. Broadhurst. Mr. Broadhurst, Global News reported that 48 hours before the candidate nomination cutoff in the 2019 election, senior Liberal Party officials received an urgent briefing by CSIS that the Liberal candidate for Don Valley North was part of a foreign interference network. Who were the senior Liberal Party officials who were part of this briefing?
Madam Chair, I'm not in a position where I can discuss the contents of briefings that were provided to the Liberal Party. As the National Security and Intelligence Advisor has provided information to this committee, we can confirm that a briefing did take place during that campaign. There were individuals at the party who had been sworn in as part of the protocol that our government had put in place to be able to share the sensitive information with the parties during the campaign. In 2019, those individuals were Zam Ishmael, Braden Cayley, and Mathieu Lafrance.
Okay, thank you for that. And just for the record, it should be noted that that briefing took place on September 28th, 2019, which also happened to be 48 hours before the nomination cutoff for the 2019 election. Madam Chair, through you to Mr. Broadhurst, what is the name of the Liberal Party staffer responsible for overseeing 25 GTA ridings in the 2019 election?
Madam Chair, if I may, can I just receive clarification that this is related to the public reporting about such a staffer in the media?
It is.
So, if I may, Madam Chair, it is a somewhat difficult question to answer on account of the description of the job does not match the system that we had set up during that campaign. Taking a generous view of it, we had a network of field workers during the campaign who supported local ridings. None of them were in charge of ridings. Local ridings are in charge of their own affairs. They are there to provide support in that end. And to go one step further, none of those field workers at any time had any access to any information contained in any privileged briefings. That was solely the three people I mentioned.
Through you, Madam Chair, undertake to provide the names of those organizers in the GTA, the 25 GTA ridings, which would be the ridings within the City of Toronto.
The names of all the field workers?
Yeah. Yes.
If it's the will of the committee, we will do it.
Thank you very much. And going back to the September 28th, 2019 briefing, when was the Prime Minister made aware of that briefing and the contents of the briefing?
I will answer part of that. I'll also turn to Mr. Ishmael, given his involvement in it, as I think it might provide some additional information as well. Upon receiving the briefing, Mr. Ishmael informed me as National Campaign Director I had the requisite security clearance from my previous job, which continued despite the leave of absence I had taken. We had confirmed that before the campaign, so that's why we did not use one of the slots provided to the party for that. Upon hearing that, we decided it would be right to inform the Prime Minister of the content of the briefing that we had received. We needed to ensure that that was done safely and securely. Sometimes a difficult task, sometimes during a campaign, as the leader of the party would be on the road. As it happened, he was going to be in Ottawa the next day, and so I briefed him in a safe manner on the 29th.
For that, why was the nomination of the candidate for Don Valley North not revoked?
Again, Madam Chair, I'm not in a position to confirm what the content of the briefing we received from the national security officials was. I can say there was no actionable item there. The security agencies were not seeking any kind of guidance or direction from the Prime Minister at that time. It was an information briefing.
Was there any discussion about the status of the candidacy of the now sitting member of Parliament for Don Valley North?
With the national...
Just to be clear, I'm not asking you to reveal the contents of that briefing. I'm asking you on the 29th or thereabouts, were there discussions between yourself and the Prime Minister about the status of the candidacy of the current member for Don Valley North?
Again, given that we're not going to be discussing the content of the briefing at that time, I'm not going to be able to provide information about the conversation that the Prime Minister and I had.
Who was the campaign manager for the candidate in Don Valley North? And if you don't know offhand, could you undertake to provide the name of that individual?
I actually don't know the name. I do not know.
Okay. And likewise, could you undertake, as I presume you don't know the answer, but who was the chair of that candidate's nomination campaign?
I do not know it. If it's the will of the committee, we'll get the information.
You'll make that undertaking?
If it's the will of the committee, yes.
Well, I'm asking you.
Well, I mean, I think there's a process for requesting information,
Yeah,
right?
I'm asking you. I'd ask that you undertake that. I don't see why that would be problematic.
I think it's just best to go through the process that's established.
Yeah, and that is.
Excellent. So I just.
That I ask you
No,
to
I
make
think
an
when I
undertaking,
give,
you give an undertaking.
I think you thank
or
you.
not.
I think what happens is you go back and forth a couple of times. We hear the beep, beep, beep. Mr. Nader was in the chair. We only had to hear it once. So I think we can offer me the same courtesy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to go back in your previous round of questions, Mr. Broadhurst, I caught the names. You said there was two other names. You said Azam's name. I got Braden Haley and somebody LaFrance. Could you just clarify who that is?
Mathieu LaFrance.
Matthew LaFrance. Okay, thank you very much. So you had a briefing with the Prime Minister on the 29th, which is a day after you had the information briefing where you received the information. And who else was in that room with you? Can you tell us who was there? Obviously, the Prime Minister was there. If you briefed the Prime Minister, was Katie Telford present for that briefing?
I'm sure I can confirm I spoke to the Prime Minister alone.
Prime Minister alone. And you've already agreed to undertake to provide us the name of your GTA organizer or organizers. So my question then goes back to, it was actually brought about by Mr. Ishmael, who just said that it would be inappropriate to discuss sensitive information with a candidate under law, yet Sam Cooper has tweeted out that the individual who was looking after the GTA ridings actually told the candidate in Don Valley North that they were a CSIS target. So I guess I'm asking, which Liberal Party official or officials would have leaked the contents of this classified CSIS briefing to the Liberal staffer that was responsible for these GTA ridings? Who would have done that? If you were the only one in the briefing with the Prime Minister.
In that circumstance, I would say the reporting is incorrect. And I would say that is often the case. There is no way that any staffer working as a field organizer in the 2019 election campaign would have had access to any information provided in a briefing. So,
CSIS sources have actually said that that's the case, and you're saying that the CSIS sources and Mr. Cooper are incorrect.
Again, reacting only to the public reporting at this point, I can't speak to what sources they're relying upon on that front. I can tell you that information is incorrect.
CSIS recommend in in the briefing that the Liberal Party should revoke the nomination of the candidate in Don Valley North?
I'll let them speak to this as well, but that would have been inappropriate for them to make that kind of recommendation. That is not their role. It's not the role of intelligence to dictate to parties about how they conduct their affairs. It is to provide the information that they need at any given time. Again, not going to get into the content of that, but I can say from my experience of working with CSIS and intelligence officials in government, they would never have taken that step. Again, I would point to that being another perhaps inaccurate piece of the public reporting that has happened in this case.
The entire judgment of whether or not your candidate should have proceeded would have been a decision made completely internally by the Liberal Party of Canada.
Again, I'm not going to confirm what information was provided about who it was being provided, but the determinations of candidates are the bailiwick of the parties.
So, following the briefing, were there any discussions that were held with yourself, with the other two individuals that you identified, or the Prime Minister, that discussed the status of the candidate? Because it was 2 days prior to nominations closing. When you first learned of this, the Prime Minister had a day to make a decision as to whether or not to proceed with this candidate. It looks like that decision was made. But was that actual issue discussed? Can you tell us that?
I'm not going to discuss the nature and content of the briefings about the subject matter of them. Again, I can only point out what is publicly reported, and I think I've pointed out that there have been inaccuracies in that public reporting.
So you won't. It seems odd to me that if you had if the security intelligence service of the country came to a political party bringing information of concern to a political party about the integrity of the process, about the integrity of the nomination process, prior to a nomination deadline or a candidate deadline during an election, and no decision was made. I guess I'm just wondering, why wasn't that decision made? Why was the nomination of the Liberal Party candidate for Don Valley North not revoked when you had time to do so?
Again, not going to discuss what was the content of those briefings. I think that you are making assumptions based on reporting that has not always been accurate.
Mr. Nader.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for the indulgence. Briefly to our witnesses through you, the Prime Minister has stated repeatedly that he has never received any information about candidates receiving money from China. I'm asking whether you can confirm that the Prime Minister, in fact, does have no knowledge of any candidate, nomination contestant, electoral district association, or political party having received funding either directly or indirectly from Beijing. And secondly, following the September 28th and 29th briefings with CSIS on the 28th, the Prime Minister on 29th, whether any further information regarding those matters were shared with any external entities, including authorities or law enforcement entities after those two briefings. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Starting with the first question, the Prime Minister was truthful in his statement. I have nothing to add to it. On the second matter, I just want to make sure, Madam Chair, that I'm understanding it. You're asking, did we go to different authorities than the ones that spoke to us in the first place? So we did not, in that any authority that I could have thought of at that point already has a working relationship with CSIS. There's an MOU in place, for example, with the Commissioner of Elections who investigates electoral malfeasance. There's a free flow of exchange of information there. It's not our place to do that since it's not our information. It was CSIS's information. So anything that I could have thought of at that time, or any of us would have thought of, would have already been covered by the existing relations of the intelligence agency.